The war had ended, but the silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy. It felt like something broken was left behind, something that could never be fixed. Commander Harris stood alone near the edge of the human colony base, watching. As the wind swept across the dry alien plains, he had fought for years on the front lines of the war against the Zarian Empire. Now, with the surrender signed, the war was over and strange rewards were being handed out. Every officer received something. Some got land, others received rare metals. But for a few higher-ranked soldiers, the spoils were not things. They were people, captives, Zarian women taken as part of surrender customs rooted in ancient alien tradition. Harris wasn't prepared when a quiet knock came at his temporary quarters. He opened the door and saw 2 guards standing beside a small, cloaked figure. The taller guard gave a respectful nod and said, "Your reward, sir." The figure stepped forward, head lowered. The cloak fell slightly, revealing smooth pale blue skin, glowing eyes dim with tiredness, and small, elfin ears that twitched slightly at the noise of the door. Harris didn't speak right away. His jaw tightened. "This wasn't right." "She is yours," the guard added. "High value. She's the daughter of a noble Zarian family, refused to speak since capture. Be careful, she might resist." The guards left without another word. Harris stood at the doorway with the Zarian woman looking down, her arms wrapped around herself tightly. For a long moment, neither of them moved. "Come in," Harris finally said in a calm voice. She didn't respond but slowly stepped inside. Her walk was careful, as if she expected something bad to happen at any moment. Harris pointed to the cot in the corner of the room. "You can rest there. I won't hurt you." She sat, silent, still wrapped in the cloak. Her hands trembled slightly, but she made no sound. Not even a question. Harris turned away, walked to his storage unit, and took out a meal pack. He heated it and placed the tray near her. "You need food," he said. "It's safe, no tricks." She stared at the tray for a moment, then looked up at him for the first time. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, but tired. She did not touch the food. "I don't want anything from you," she said quietly, her voice dry. "I don't want anything from you either," he replied softly. "But you're here now. So you're not my prisoner. You're not my servant. Just rest?" The woman looked confused. She slowly reached out and took the food, sniffed it, then took a bite. She chewed in silence. The resistance base was a busy place, full of people moving quickly, preparing for the next mission. Alira and Callan arrived together, stepping from the ship into the strong lights and loud voices. Callan looked around with tired eyes. It had been years since he saw so many humans and aliens working side by side. The place was both strange and hopeful. Alira led him through the crowd, ignoring curious glances. She was proud to stand beside him now. The boy who once gave her hope was no longer a stranger. He was part of the fight. At the command center, officers gathered around, watching them carefully. "Who is this?" one asked sharply. Alira stepped forward. "This is Callan. He is a survivor, the human who helped me when I was a child." Some officers exchanged doubtful looks. Humans were often seen as reckless, but Alira's voice held conviction. "He carries knowledge we need," she continued. "He knows the enemy. He survived the Forbidden's planet when no one else did." A commander nodded slowly. "We will test his loyalty, but if he is as valuable as you say, he will have a place here." Callan met her eyes and smiled faintly. He had been alone for so long, but now, with Alira, he felt hope again. In the days that followed, Callan shared what he knew about the machines and the war. Together, he and Alira helped plan missions to protect others and fight back. One evening, as the base grew quiet, Alira held out the small pendant, the symbol of their past and future. "Keep this," she said softly. "It is a reminder that hope can survive even in the darkest times." Callan took it and held it close. "Thank you for everything." Their story was a sign to all that no matter the hardships, kindness could change the course of a life, and that hope, once given, could be carried forward. Together, they would fight for a better future for themselves, their people, and all who still believed. Harris sat on the floor across the room, leaning against the wall. He said nothing more. He didn't stare at her. He didn't ask her name. He simply sat there and looked at the wall, as if this situation was just another strange moment in a life full of strange moments. Minutes passed. The woman finished eating. She looked around the room, small, quiet, simple. "I thought humans celebrated victory with violence," she said suddenly. Harris looked at her and answered, "Some do, I don't." She narrowed her eyes. "Then why accept me as a reward?" He sighed. "I didn't ask for any prize. They gave you to me without warning." "You could return me," she replied. "They wouldn't take you back," Harris said. "And they might give you to someone else who won't be kind." Her expression shifted slightly, something like worry or confusion. "I'll ask again," she said slowly. "What do you want from me?" Harris stood up and walked to a shelf. He pulled out a spare blanket and gently placed it at the edge of her cot without stepping too close. Then he looked her in the eyes and said clearly, "I don't want anything. You're a person, not property." She didn't speak again. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat on the cot, wrapped in the blanket, staring out the window at the alien sky. Harris lay on the floor across the room, eyes closed but fully awake. He knew this wasn't over. He knew others in the base would question him, laugh at him, call him weak. But none of that mattered, because deep down, he had made a decision. He wouldn't treat her like a thing. Not ever, and even if she never trusted him, that would be her right. He owed her that much and more. Days passed slowly in. The quiet human base on the edge of the war-torn planet. Commander Harris kept to his routine, fixing machines, organizing supplies, and quietly watching over the Zarian woman he had been given. She stayed mostly silent, sitting by the small window of her room, watching the dusty sky, her eyes held. A mix of sadness and anger, but also curiosity. Harris did not try to push her to talk. He respected her silence. He gave her space but never ignored her. One afternoon, he brought her a simple meal and sat a few feet away, working on a small device. The quiet sounds of tools filled the room. After a while, she spoke, her voice soft but uncertain. "Why don't you treat me like the others do?" she asked. Harris stopped working and looked up at her. "Others?" he repeated. She nodded slowly. "The soldiers who got prizes like me, they force us. They demand respect with fear. I thought you would be the same." He shook his head gently. "I don't believe respect comes from fear. And I don't believe anyone should be forced to obey." She studied him carefully. "You are different from them." "Maybe," Harris said with a small smile. "Or maybe I just see people as people." She was quiet again, but something in her eyes changed. For the first time, she looked at him like a person, not a stranger. Over the next days, their routine shifted. Harris fixed broken things in the base. She watched him work. Sometimes she even helped. One morning, while Harris worked on the broken communication panel, she handed him a small tool without a word. He looked up, surprised. "Thank you," he said softly. She only nodded. Their small acts of trust built slowly, like bricks forming a wall, but not everyone in the base understood. One evening, as Harris walked through the hallway, two officers stopped him. "You are too soft with your prize," one said with a sneer. "The rules are clear. They belong to us now. Control them or lose your honor." Harris frowned. "She is not a prize. She is a person. I will not mistreat her." The officers laughed. "You will lose your position if you keep this up." Harris stood firm. "Then so be it." That night he returned to his quarters and found the Zarian woman waiting by his door. She looked nervous but determined. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. He nodded and stepped aside. She entered, holding a small woven basket with flowers, strange alien flowers with soft blue petals. "I want to thank you," she said, her voice soft but sincere. "For what?" Harris asked, surprised. "For not hurting me," she answered. "For treating me with kindness when I expected pain." Harris smiled. "You don't have to thank me. It's the right thing to do." She sat on the floor across from him. For a long time they simply looked at each other, sharing a moment without words. Then she said, "I am called Lyra." "Lyra," Harris repeated. "I'm glad you told me." Why do you care? She asked suddenly. Why do you see me as more than a trophy? Harris thought for a moment. Because I know what it means to lose everything. To be seen as less than human. I won't do that to you. Her eyes softened. You are not like the others. No, he said. And I hope you can teach me how to be better. Lyra smiled faintly, the first real smile he had seen. The next days passed, with more small conversations. She learned some words in his language, and he tried to understand her. They shared quiet moments watching sunsets together, repairing broken equipment side by side and slowly building a fragile friendship. One day an officer came to Harris. With an order. You must train her properly, the officer said sternly. Make sure she knows her place. Harris shook his head. I will not treat her as property, the officer's eyes narrowed. You disobey the council's orders. At your own risk. Harris replied calmly, I obey my own conscience. Lyra overheard the conversation. She looked worried, but also hopeful. That night she sat beside Harris and said, I am scared. I have never had someone protect me like this before. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You are safe here. For the first time, Lyra leaned into his touch. Trusting him, the war had left many scars, but in this small corner of the universe, a new bond was growing, a bond built on respect, trust, and kindness. The days grew quieter between Harris and Lyra, but a new kind of connection began to form. It was not loud or full of grand gestures. Instead, it was built in the small moments they shared, the silences that said more than words ever could. Each morning, Harris would prepare his work tools and walk to the broken parts of the base that needed fixing. Lyra, curious and willing to learn, would quietly follow. She watched how his hands moved, how carefully he handled delicate machines, how patient he was when things didn't work right. One day, as he worked on a damaged power panel, Lyra picked up a small tool and handed it to him without a word. Harris looked up, surprised, then smiled warmly. Thank you, he said. She only nodded and turned away, but Harris noticed a small flicker of pride in her eyes. Their routine settled into a comfortable rhythm. Harris worked on repairs. Lyra watched and helped when she could. Neither rushed the other. The silence between them became easy. During breaks, Harris would talk softly about Earth. He described green fields, blue skies, the smell of rain, and the feel of soft grass under bare feet. Lyra listened, fascinated. She had never seen such a place. Her home planet was harsh, full of rocky deserts and fierce storms. One evening, after a long day of work, they sat outside the base, watching the twin moons rise. The sky was a deep violet, speckled with stars. I wish I could see Earth, Lyra said quietly. Harris smiled. Maybe one day you will. For a moment they shared a peaceful silence, but the peace was fragile. Others on the base whispered and watched Harris with suspicion. One officer, Lieutenant Kess, was especially critical. You're wasting your time, Kess said one day when Harris passed by. She will never trust you. She's trained to fight against us, not befriend us. Harris shook his head. People can change. Not all, Kess replied coldly. She is a prize, not a friend. Harris kept walking. He refused to argue. One afternoon, a sharp command came from the base leader. Harris, you are ordered to train your prize properly. No more delays. Harris felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He went back to his quarters where Lyra was sitting. Quietly, I have to tell you something, he said. She looked up, alert. They want me to train you. To make sure you obey. Lyra's eyes darkened. I won't do it, Harris said firmly. I will not treat you like an object. She stood slowly and moved closer. Thank you, she whispered. That night she brought him a small piece of alien fabric woven with bright colors. It is a gift, she said softly. Harris accepted it carefully. You didn't have to, he said. I wanted to, Lyra replied. They sat together, the gift between them like a fragile promise. Over the next days, Harris taught Lyra words from his language. She repeated them carefully, sometimes stumbling, but always smiling. Lyra also shared small stories about her people, tales of brave warriors, peaceful gardens, and distant stars. One afternoon, as Harris fixed a broken door, Lyra handed him a piece of metal shaped like a leaf. It is from my home, she said. Harris smiled broadly. I will keep it safe. Their bond deepened not with grand speeches but with small acts, sharing food, fixing broken things, and simply being near each other. One night, as a soft rain fell outside, Harris found Lyra standing by the window, staring into the darkness. Are you afraid? He asked gently. She shook her head. No, I feel safe, Harris nodded. Good, because you are. She turned to him, and for the first time their eyes held no fear, only trust. The war had left scars, but here, two souls from different worlds found comfort in simple kindness. The desert winds had been calm for days, but one evening, the sky darkened suddenly. A fierce sandstorm was coming, faster than anyone had expected. Commander Harris was alerted by the base's alarms. He hurried through the halls, checking the seals on windows and doors. The storm would not be gentle. It could destroy equipment and endanger lives. He found Lyra in her room, sitting quietly by the window, watching the sky change color. She stood when he entered, a look of concern on her face. The storm is coming, Harris said calmly. We need to prepare. Lyra nodded and followed him outside to help secure the equipment. Though the storm was dangerous, Lyra worked without hesitation. She moved with grace and purpose, surprising Harris with her strength. As the wind picked up, Harris and Lyra hurried back inside, sealing the heavy doors. The sound of the storm was loud and frightening, shaking the walls. The power flickered and then went out. Life support is failing, Harris said, pulling his communicator. We need to fix the main generator. Lyra looked at him seriously. I will help. Together, they rushed through the base's dark corridors to the generator room. The sandstorm roared outside like a wild beast. When they reached the generator, sparks flew from broken wires. Harris started repairing the damage, but suddenly a pipe burst nearby, spraying hot steam. Lyra saw it first and pushed Harris away. Just in time, the steam hit her arm. She cried out in pain. Harris quickly grabbed a cloth to wrap her wound. You're hurt. We need to get to the shelter. Lyra nodded, biting back her pain. He carried her through the dark hallways to the emergency storm shelter, where a few others had gathered. Inside the small room, the air was thick and warm. Harris sat down beside Lyra, gently checking her injury. You saved me, he said softly. She looked at him, eyes shining with gratitude. You saved me too. The storm outside raged for hours. In the quiet shelter, Harris and Lyra talked. For the first time without fear or distance, she told him about her childhood, how she had grown up in a world where survival meant being strong and careful. I never knew kindness like yours, she said. Harris smiled gently. Maybe kindness is the strongest thing of all. For the first time, Lyra reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool against his warmth. I don't want to be a prize anymore, she whispered. You won't be, Harris promised Daz. The storm calmed and the morning light began to creep in. They stood together by the shelter's door. The world outside was covered in dust, but something new had started inside. The beginning of trust and friendship. The days after the storm were quiet, but tension grew beneath the surface. Commander Harris noticed it in the way people looked at him and Lyra. Whispers followed them through the halls of the base, and not all were kind. One morning, Harris was called to the base commander's office. The room was cold and filled with the heavy scent of metal and authority. Sit down, Harris, the commander said. His voice firm. Harris took a seat, feeling the weight of the moment. I have been watching you, the commander began. You have a unique approach to your prize. Harris kept his eyes steady. She is not a prize. She is a person. The commander's eyes narrowed. That is not how the council sees it. Your orders are to train her to ensure she follows. Human command and does not cause trouble. Harris shook his head. I will not treat her as property. I refuse. The commander's voice grew cold. You are risking your position and possibly the peace agreement. Harris stood, steady and calm. I serve with honor. If that means protecting her as a person, then I accept the risk. The commander's silence was heavy. After the meeting, Harris returned to his quarters. Lyra was waiting quietly. I heard, she said softly. Commander warned me, Harris admitted. She looked at him with concern. Why do you risk so much for me? He smiled gently. Because I believe in something better. Because I believe in you? Lyra's eyes shone with something new hope. That evening they sat outside under the stars, far from the watchful eyes of the base. I don't understand your world, Lyra said, but I want to learn. Harris reached for her hand. And I want to learn about yours. Suddenly, footsteps approached. Lieutenant Kess appeared, his face stern. Harris, he said sharply, you have one last chance to follow orders. Train her properly or face consequences. Harris stood, unshaken. I will not betray my conscience. Kess's eyes flashed with anger, but he left without another word. Lyra squeezed Harris's hand. Thank you for standing for me. Days later, Harris received word that his transfer was approved. He was to leave the base and return to Earth unless he obeyed. When Harris told Lyra, she was quiet for a long moment. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. You won't lose me, Harris promised. No matter what happens. Together. They prepared for the uncertain future. The war had ended, but a new battle was beginning, a battle for freedom, trust, and love. The day of departure came faster than Harris expected. The base was busy with soldiers preparing for their next orders, but his mind was only on one thing: leaving with Lyra. He packed his essentials quietly, careful not to draw attention. Lyra watched him closely, her expression unreadable. Harris, she said softly, I want to go with you. He looked at her, surprised but glad. You don't have to, he said gently. It's dangerous outside the base. I am not a prize, she replied firmly. I want to be free with you. Harris smiled, feeling a warmth he hadn't felt in years. Together, they walked to the shuttle bay. The crowd was silent, watching. The unusual pair. No one expected Lyra to stand beside Harris as equals. The shuttle's engines roared to life, and as it lifted off, the whispers and stares followed them. Inside, Harris and Lyra sat side by side, the hum of the ship filling the space. They looked out the window at the fading planet. Leaving behind war and fear, Lyra reached for Harris's hand, and he took it without hesitation. We don't know what awaits us, Harris said softly. But we face it together, Lyra answered. The journey was long and quiet, but their bond grew stronger with each passing hour. When the shuttle finally landed on a small human settlement far from the front lines, they stepped out into a new world. The air was fresh, and the sky was wide and open. Here, no one knew them. No one judged. They found a small house at the edge of town, a place to start anew. Days turned into weeks. As Harris and Lyra settled into their new life, Lyra began learning the local language. Practicing carefully every day, Harris helped her understand Earth's simple joys, the warmth of sunlight, the taste of fresh food, the sound of birds singing. Together, they planted a small garden, mixing earth seeds with strange blue flowers from Lyra's home. Neighbors watched curiously but soon grew friendly. One evening, as the sun set in soft colors, Lyra took Harris's hand. You gave me freedom, she said, and you gave me hope. He replied. In the quiet of the evening, beneath the stars, they knew they had found something rare and true, a love built on respect, trust, and choice. The small town was peaceful, far from the battles and fears of the past. Harris and Lyra had made a new home together, one built on understanding and kindness. Lyra spent her days learning Earth's ways. She practiced speaking the local language, sometimes stumbling but always smiling. Harris was patient, guiding her gently. They worked side by side in their garden, tending to earth plants and the strange blue flowers she had brought from her world. The mix of colors and scents was a small symbol of their new life. Two worlds coming together. The neighbors watched with curiosity. Some whispered about the strange woman with pale blue skin and soft elfin ears. But slowly their fear turned to respect. Harris was known for his quiet strength, and Lyra for her gentle kindness. One afternoon, a young girl from the town approached Lyra in the garden. Can you teach me how to care for flowers like you do? The girl asked shyly. Lyra smiled warmly. I would like that very much. It was a small moment, but it meant the world to both of them. Evenings were their favorite time. After a day of work, they would sit on their porch under the wide sky, watching the stars. One night, as the wind whispered softly, Lyra reached out and took Harris's hand. You gave me freedom, she said, her voice full of feeling. "And you gave me your heart," he answered, squeezing her hand gently. They looked at each other, knowing that the journey had not been easy, but every step had been worth it. Peace was not just the absence of war. It was this two people choosing to care for each other, to respect each other's past, and to build a future together. Harris thought about the war and the strange custom that had brought Lyra to him. What others saw as a prize, he had seen as a person, someone to protect and love. Lyra thought about the fear she had carried for so long and how, in this quiet place, she had found safety and trust. Their story was not just about survival. It was about hope. And in a universe often torn by conflict, their bond was a reminder that kindness and love could heal even the deepest wounds. As the stars shone above, Harris and Lara sat close, ready to face whatever the future might bring together.